What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Dolphins Daily, your daily dose of Dolphins content with your boy Chris Kane. Let's get to the show. So, as you can tell from the setup, this is a very different layout for what we're doing. This is going to be my vacation series of shows for you guys. So, I mentioned on a previous show, I'm away for the week, but we got to give y'all some content. And so, because we can't do current events because I'm not there, we can talk about a little bit about the history of the Dolphins. So, it's still interesting to y'all. Want to make sure we give you content. And hopefully, you like this new style because it's a little bit more free flowy, a little bit more top of the dome. But if you like it, then we'll do more of it. If not, I'll be back next week. So it won't really matter as much, right? So we're going to do a deep dive into the 2008 season. Now, if you don't remember, this is following the 1 in 15 debacle the year before. There will be a future video on that. Wink, foreshadowing, right? 2008 comes around. Team morale is at an all-time low. Fan engagement all time low. We literally just went 1 in 15. So people are like, all right, what are we doing? The Dolphins decided to bring in the big tuna himself, Bill Parcells, who, if you know Bill Parcells, his whole history, multiple time champion, but very hard nosed guy. Bill Parcells, not for the foolishness, he's the guy that really trained Bill Belichick to be Bill Belichick. If you also know Bill Parcells, he's a guy that he doesn't stick around for too long in any one place because he turns it around really quickly and he burns it out. Jim Harbaugh is kind of like this a little bit. Outside of Michigan, he all of his stops were like 3 to 5 years. I turn you around, get some glory, then I'm out of there. From Stanford, San Diego State, San Francisco, and then he finally went to eventually Michigan, and he stayed for a little bit longer. But even there, they got a pay cut, and they were like, "Hey, I don't know about you." They won a championship, and they all forgot that ever happened. But I digress. So you bring in Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells is like, "Hey, we need to reestablish what the culture of this team is. We're going old school. Bring in Tony Sperano. He says, hey, we're going to be a ground and pound team, defense, low scoring game. I don't know what we were doing last year in '07. We're not doing that anymore. But to do this, you got to make sure you have the right coach and quarterback combination. It just so happens that year the Jets decided to be the Jets, and they gave up on Chad Pennington and brought in Brett Favre. Yes, that Brett Favre. So they were like, "Oh, we get Brett Favre, we're gonna win." They dumped Chad Pennington, picked up Brett Favre, and because one of the tenets of Bill Parcells' teams are ball control, run the ball, don't make mistakes. I don't want a celebrity type player at quarterback. Chad Pennington fits the bill perfectly. Now, Chad Pennington goes all the way back to Marshall. Believe it or not, Chad Pennington was the quarterback for not Marshall, for Randy Moss back at Marshall. We know Randy Moss, in my opinion, the second best receiver of all time. But even with that, Chad Pennington's stats were gaudy, even though he had Randy Moss, who was literally jumping over people in college. Crazy. But the whole word on Chad Pennington is not super athletic. Arm can maybe throw the ball 50 yards. Maybe. But super accurate, really good leader, really good locker room guy. In a perfect system, things can work out. So Parcells said, hey, I need a guy that's going to come in, do his job, not mess things up. So he brings in Chad Pennington. We start the year, we're doing okay. And on Monday Night Football, we did what people revolutionized the league for a time. We introduced the wildcat offense. This is on Monday night against the Patriots. Ronnie Brown goes crazy with 4 touchdowns, and all of a sudden the league is like, "Whoa, what is this? The running back playing quarterback?" We start doing this, and now every team in the league within 2 weeks has some kind of wildcat package, right? My wide receiver played quarterback in Pop Warner, and they got them lined up doing that kind of thing, right? So everyone's doing this. It took the world by storm. Ronnie Brown lived up to, for that year anyway, lived up to what we thought he could be out of Auburn. And couple that with Chad Pennington's solid year, 3,600 yards, 19 touchdowns, 7 picks. Nothing to sneeze at, but like 68% completion percentage, which is fantastic. If you know Chad Pennington, it's dink and dunk, thinking at 35, here's six. 34, here's five. That's Chad Pennington's whole thing. So we get all the way to the last game of the year. Now, remember, he got dumped by the Jets, right? So when you get dumped by a team, there's some animus there, especially when you bring in a 58-year-old Brett Favre to do it. So we always play the Jets twice because the Jets are in our division. Obviously, we do that, and all of a sudden, the last game of the season is win, and you're in the playoffs and win the division against the Jets. So we set up this beautiful situation where, can Chad Pennington get the ultimate redemption? But he could also be the ultimate goal, right? Because if he doesn't win the game, then that's not good, right? So we played the last game against the Jets, and it's a win and end situation. You beat the Jets, you make it to the playoffs. Hey, you beat the Jets, you can make it to the playoffs. That's how this is going to set up to go. We end up winning the game 24-17, winning the division 11-5, making it to the playoffs, and Chad Pennington gets to be like the goat for the day, or more or less for the year, right? Now we get to the playoffs, things don't quite work out as well. We lose to the Ravens in the first round, but that's not really the more important part of the season. The whole idea is the year before, we literally won one game. So we won one game the year before, and the following season you win 11 to make it to the playoffs. That's one of the best turnaround is in history. Like '07, we had a lot of things going on. Again, there'll be a video on this down the line where we had people like Jason Taylor wanting to get traded. We had Zach Taylor. Sorry, not Zach Taylor. Wow. You had Big Zach in the middle, like, hey, what's going on here at my end of my career? What are we doing here? We almost could have gone 0-16, and we literally within a year turned everything around. Now we didn't sustain the success of this year past '08. It wasn't like '08 happened and then we had like an 8 year run of glory because again, Bill Parcells' whole thing is turn around, get it working, and then get out. Basically, what it did was one give us our last divisional win, which is crazy. That was at this point almost 20 years ago, which is just absurd. But it showed that that's the formula for how you turn a team around. You have to figure out where we culture wise, right? Which is you either have a culture, or you don't have a culture. Um, we just went back to kind of old school stuff. Can you get that open? Yeah. We just went back to what the culture was. Like sometimes that ground and pound, old school, low scoring game. That's the way to kind of do it, right? I think nowadays there's a lot of who can score 30 points, 40 points, 50 points. Ideally, you just want to outscore your opponent. That's the only thing. So if you win the game 20-17, still counts the same. Doesn't matter if you score 100 points. Like right now, we're in the part of our team where our offense is everything. So we're always trying to outscore everybody. But theoretically, if it was 17-14, then we still win the game the same way. Bill Parcells is very old school. Tony Serrano is very old school. Cam Cameron, I don't know what he was. He was a alleged offensive genius that the offensive genius never came through. Let's just be honest about what that was. But since the Dolphins '08 season, a lot of teams have adopted a similar philosophy. Like Houston did it most recently when they had CJ Stroud, where they just said, hey, we got a young court. This is what actually how Seattle ran their team to some degree. When they had Russell Wilson early in his career, Russell Wilson wasn't the reason they were winning games. He just didn't make mistakes, good on third down, defer to the running game, defer to the defense. If you do that, a lot of times you can do well. Kansas City, before they got Mahomes, that's what Alex Smith did. Alex Smith was very much a dink and dunk. Honestly, he's a little bit more athletic than Chad Pennington, if you want to break that down. He was number one pick in the draft, but still, like his arm wasn't ultra elite. He was pretty athletic, but he was at best 11-5 kind of guy. Get you to the playoffs, maybe win a game, didn't maybe get eliminated. He was never a Super Bowl level guy, but a guy that was very consistent and a guy you could always be in the game with. That's what Chad Pennington was for us at the end. Short-lived success because, again, we didn't have like a long-term run of Chad Pennington being some like amazing Dolphins quarterback. He was better than, the Jay Fiedlers and Cleo Lemons and just how many Dolphins quarterback came and went during that time. But this is a season that really stands out for a lot of reasons. Besides the division title, besides the Wildcat, it was just like a time where you can go from hopeless as a fan, and when you're 1-15, the only team that's been worse than that recently is like Detroit with 0-16. I think Cleveland with 0-16 too. So besides those two teams in the last, I don't know, 30 years, nobody can say we were that bad. And we were 0-15. So it wasn't like we had won one game and then lost 15. We were 0-15. It was like, hey, we lose this last game, we're 0-16. And so a lot of people were like, "Oh, this team is going nowhere fast," and then within a year, 10 game turnaround playoffs. So it can happen quickly. I know some people get discouraged as fans, like, what are we doing? What are we building towards? We're so far away from where we want to go. You really aren't. If you rebuild it properly with the right coach, quarterback, and philosophy, you can turn around. Now, yes, you want to turn around and be sustained. Of course you do. But you can turn around and at least be competitive and possibly a playoff team real quick. I saw the Colts go from winning 2 games to winning 11 and being in the playoffs with Andrew Luck within a year. I mean, that can happen. And then had he not, had his, I think, liver destroyed, crazy, he got hit a lot. And then that happened, the Colts will still be probably a perennial playoff team, maybe engine towards Super Bowl contention after just being an awful team. You can turn around quickly. So this year really stands out. Hopefully, this can be a template going forward. We're trying to figure out what our current identity is. It's not quite ground and pound defense oriented, but maybe in the next year or two we can figure out what's a winning formula, turn this around a little bit, and see what we can do with it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little kind of free range format. I know we don't have the topics off to the side, so we're just kind of like weaving through it. But this is fun for me, so I'm gonna do a few more of these. But as always, thank you for tuning in to Dolphins Daily. We'll see you next time on Dolphins Daily.